want to talk in this opening segment about Starbucks and how Starbucks has just gotten stuck with a $25 million verdict that they have to pay for, get this, anti-white racial discrimination or anti-white racism. It's a very interesting case. But actually, kind of coincidentally, I was scrolling social media this morning. I saw a funny thing in the Babylon Bee. Starbucks engineers very excited because they have almost come up with a coffee half as good as McDonald's. So digest that one for you. But anyway, these corporations act in horrendous ways when there is a race issue involved. And they often will go after the wrong people, and they do it solely because they are trying to look good. They're trying to prove that they are more anti-racist than the next guy. Well, in the aftermath of the George Floyd business, it turned out there were two black guys who were hanging out at Starbucks, and they were not buying anything, but they were just spending time there. And apparently, at one point, they wanted to use the Philadelphia store bathroom, and some of the employees basically said, "You are not really a customer of Starbucks. Our bathrooms are for customers, and you have to leave." These guys refused to leave, and so one of the employees called the cops. Now, of course, because of the sensitivities around George Floyd, there was a big ruckus about this, and there were some protests outside of Starbucks. And so Starbucks decided that in the aftermath of this, well, first of all, the CEO of Starbucks did some major groveling. This is a guy named Kevin Johnson. He flew to Philadelphia. He met with the two black men personally to apologize. He then also, apparently Starbucks shut down its 8,000 stores for a period of time. Why? To give them sensitivity and anti-racism training, all because of this one incident. And so then Starbucks realized, well, we got to really prove that we're really anti-racist. We need to fire somebody. And so they found a regional manager. Her name was Shannon Phillips. She's kind of an upper level executive and white. And they said, you're going to be fired because of your mishandling of the situation. Now, it is this very same Shannon Phillips who filed a lawsuit, and some very interesting details came out in the lawsuit. First of all, it came out that the Starbucks manager who called the cops was black. So Starbucks should have fired that guy, right? No, they didn't want to fire him because they figured that may make the problem worse. We're firing a black guy. We can't fire a black guy. We have to fire a white person. But there was no white person in sight. So what do? They basically find this regional manager. Now, this regional manager had nothing to do with the incident. She oversees a whole bunch of Starbucks locations across New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And so they needed an excuse to fire her. Why? Because she's not the one who called the cops. So they basically said that she had not taken action on a racial discrimination complaint that had been filed, again, not against her, but against some other guy. Now, she goes on to say that when she looked at this racial incident, the other guy was completely innocent. This was a guy who had worked at the company for 13 years. And she goes, I looked at the incident. There was really nothing there, so I didn't act on it. So what's going on here is that the woman was singled out because she's white, and Starbucks wanted to sort of fire a white person in a prominent, kind of flamboyant way. And so they got rid of her, and so she sued. Now, you can actually tell that the jury totally got the picture here, because when you look at these damages, $25.6 million, it turns out that a tiny portion of these damages are, quote, actual damages. Usually when you go to court, you can get actual damages and punitive damages. So what's the difference? Well, actual damages are you got to prove that you actually lost that money, not that you lost it physically. But let's say, for example, that because you were fired, you couldn't find work for 2 years, you're paid $70,000 a year. So guess what? You've lost $140,000 in income plus the interest. And so that is an actual damage. But obviously, this woman didn't incur $25 million of actual damages. So as it turns out with Starbucks, the jury gave a small amount of actual damages and a giant amount of punitive damages. And what is punitive damages? The jury is trying to teach Starbucks a lesson. They're trying to teach Starbucks a lesson that racial discrimination, even against whites, is not okay. That this kind of double standard where we all have to jump up and down because there's racial discrimination against blacks, but if it's racial discrimination against whites, no big deal. It's benign discrimination. It's well motivated. Starbucks is trying to prove it's anti-racism, Dinesh. Well, you can't do it that way. You can't violate the civil rights of people just because you're trying to, virtue signal, as the term goes these days. So Starbucks is absolutely horrendous in this regard. And I think this is a very important lesson to teach them. Now, I think for conservatives, we often talk about boycotting these stores, they're woke and so on. I think a really good thing is for conservatives to start a legal operation that finds these kinds of people who are victimized by these woke corporations and on a contingency basis sues them all. Because think about it, you can collect hundreds of millions, maybe billions of dollars in damages. This then funds the lawsuits because you collect a portion of that. The rest of it goes to the plaintiff, the person making the suit, and then you use that money to file more lawsuits. So if you want to bring corporate America to its knees, teach them a lesson, make them pay a severe penalty for their vicious anti-white policies and the kind of bigotry that they now habitually engage in, this is the way to do it.